Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Is it 11 o'clock yet?
Ah,
Hi.
hi. We should be live on Facebook now, as well as YouTube. We're live on YouTube, and we're live on the CBT webpage. So please do start spreading the word. If people complain about not having a Facebook account, they can just go to the CBT website. There's a little blue button just below, like one of the first things you see on the homepage. It's a blue box with paragraph with COVID, a paragraph about our COVID restrictions,
Yeah.
and in that blue box,
I'm on mute.
a darker blue button. You're on mute now, and darker blue button will lead you right to our live stream. Anytime that there's live stream going on, and then if you want to watch it later, then there's YouTube. You can also watch it later from that same link where it says watch the live stream. If we're not currently live, there's a little button that says, watch the archives or previously recorded sessions or something like that. So please do spread the word. We want people to know that there are more options now, thanks to the hard work and efforts of our volunteers, our board, and the like. Are you raising hands or waving to each other? I can't tell, but hello. If it's hello, hello. All right, it's noon. I'm gonna start right away because I have somewhere. Today is the first day of the Central Conference of American Rabbis annual convention. It's all done virtually, and it opens at 1:00 our time. So I'm just gonna go straight through, and we're gonna try to be done at 1 so that I'm not late. So Life of Pi. 2012 movie directed by Lee. Ang Lee has done such a wide variety of different movies, but one of the more well-known movies that really got him a lot of attention was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So that, that's his genre, but in general, his style is just beautiful cinema, like stuff that's great to look at, and this was not only no exception, this was exemplary of that. Life of Pi won 4 Academy Awards and got nominated for 7 others. It won Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, and Best Visual Effects, none of which were any surprise that year, if I remember correctly. Like, nobody was like, oh no, anything else should have gotten that. It was just one of those moments where, like, yeah, we all sat back and knew Life of Pi was going to rake it in. A lot of other nominations: Best Picture, Best Writing, Screenplay, etc. All for mostly for what, just kind of the experience of movie going. Kind of nice to be watching a movie, to experience a movie that is nominated for so many awards, but not necessarily winning awards for performances. So many movies that we watch are performance driven, and this is really about behind the scenes and behind the camera, and who's really making the movie come to what we see and experience and hear, which was great. 78 other wins and 126 other nominations along the award circuit. lots and lots of awards. I very often will list the Golden Globe Awards as well as the Academy Awards that come up, but there's just no room on this slide. So we understand they got nominated for a lot. 7.9 rating on IMDb, 79 Metacritic, 86% Rotten Tomatoes. It's just a good movie. But the thing is, it's a journey. The movie is a journey. Pi's personal journey starts with a very, very young discovery of self. He's 10 or 11 years old, where when his name Piscine become, as he says, it goes from it starts out as this image of a beautiful clear pool. Those shots of his uncle swimming in the pool where you really can't tell which way is up are gorgeous. And yet his theme becomes very quickly, as is done. This is not unique to India. This is not unique to America. This is the way 10 and 11-year-olds treat each other. And his name Piscine quickly became pissing. And this schoolyard insult starts to even bleed into the vernacular of his teachers, where his chemistry teacher accidentally calls him pissing. And so he decides that he's going to change his own identity and become Pi. He does this by memorizing pi to the 100th digit, and he explains. He starts off in his class with the 3-digit representation 314, which is of course why we're talking about this movie today on March 14th, which is Pi Day. So if you're having chicken pot pie like my family's having tonight, or maybe a pizza or some cherry pie to enjoy with your food this afternoon, in celebration of Pi Day. But please, not a hot pocket. Whatever you do, don't eat a hot pocket. Those are just gross. For really, that's just a public service announcement. No one should be eating hot pockets. So the story begins with him narrating what happened to him in his life. So there's never any question where he's going to come out on the journey. There's never any doubt that he's going to be okay. But the beginning, the personal story of his name change, it shows his determination and his will to change his own fate. And to be honest, the plot itself, the physical part of the movie is a very simple plot. It is a basic 3-act play. It's got the introduction, it's got the conflict, it's got the resolution, and the denouement, the conclusion. It's not complicated as far as storyline, but where it does get its complication, where it gets its the interesting part are just in the journey itself. All that one would encounter in a journey, that are all of the beautiful things, all of the terrible things, this all happens. I forgot a point. He meets his girlfriend. He has a girlfriend at the beginning of the movie in the introduction. He meets her when he's 16, just before they get on a ship. And in a scene where they decide that they have to break up because he's moving to Canada, he mentions that he can't remember if they ever say goodbye. And then in the end of the movie, he starts crying, not because he's overwhelmed, he says, but because Richard Parker didn't say goodbye. That Richard Parker goes off into the woods in Mexico. Now, that's really, that's the movie. He says goodbye to his girlfriend. He makes a best friend. He doesn't say goodbye to his best friend. And he's distraught over both of these lack of connection in leaving. But again, this movie on Rotten Tomatoes is described as an adaptation of an unfilmable book. So that idea that you read this book and there's all this crazy stuff going on, a boy on a boat with a tiger, you can't film that. And Ang Lee does it. He achieves the near impossible. And again, this is again quoting, "It's an astonishing technical achievement that is also emotionally rewarding." And I would suggest that no one in 2012, no one today could do this movie but Ang Lee. It's gorgeous. And just to prove the point, the composition of the shots. This is Pi. He's been praying. He's maybe in prayer, maybe in thought, as the tiger stares him down. And the tiger that stares him down is both blurry and reflected, showing its kind of double ephemeral nature. If the tiger wanted, at any point it could find a way to eat him, and have, as he says, have its last meal be a skinny vegetarian boy. But for some reason it does not. Some sort of interdependence. By the way, the tiger's name, Richard Parker, is the name is shared by two figures that have to do with shipwrecks. The first is from an Edgar Allan Poe novel called The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, in which Richard Parker is a shipwrecked sailor who, with a few other crewmates, resorts to cannibalism. So Richard Parker becomes a cannibal in a shipwreck in that Poe novel, and it also, Richard Parker is the name of a survivor of an 1884 crash of a ship called the Mignonette. And these four survivors of the shipwreck did not all survive the journey on the lifeboat. Namely, Richard Parker was the crew boy, who was eaten by the other three survivors. So anyone who's aware of both of these Richard Parkers in history or literature, they don't know whether Richard Parker is going to be the cannibal or the cannibalized, which I think adds to the depth of the story itself, for sure. This shot of the two of them kind of circling each other in the lifeboat. By the way, in case you weren't aware of this, never, ever, ever was a little Indian actor ever in a boat with a live tiger. The tiger was completely CGI, 100% CGI, except for the scene where the tiger was swimming in the water. They actually took footage of a tiger swimming to get some of that. Other than that, the tiger is completely CGI throughout the whole movie. So never any danger to any humans on this film. This circling, just kind of emphasizing the balance between the two of them that's necessary, and on the background of the open sea, even when the water is calm, it's always there, it's always present, it's always dangerous. This shot, this just amazing scene of the blue algae that we actually experienced here in Southern California early last summer. My wife and kids would go take a walk on the beach with a handful of rocks and throw them into the bay, and we'd see these luminescent algae, gripping the rock as it would pass through it. It's pretty cool. I don't know if that activity kills algae or does any harm, but it was neat. And certainly this scene where the whale actually ends up doing more damage than the tiger does to Pi, making him lose his water and biscuits. Even in simple shots where Pi is, he's adapted. He's figured out how to make his raft a more stable place to stay. He's got his little fish net with his mahi-mahi in it. He's got his small square of cloth shade that he says he never knew how much joy he could get from a little square of shade. even in this kind of a shot, it still tells so much of his story. He's got his solar water filter in the background. He has settled himself into life as a shipwreck survivor. He never grows facial hair. His head hair grows. His facial hair does not. I mean, I know that's possible for a 16-year-old. It could go either way. I just find, I look at my 16-year-old in my house and the 14-year-old in my house and at least the little, hairs that they're growing here and there. And I find it a little weird that he's just as smooth in the beginning as he is at the end. But again, that's me being very, very picky. But still, he's in this shot, he's bedraggled, but he's also in his lap. He's playing the drums. And we don't see him like playing the drums for a long time. It's just kind of like ticket, ticket, ticket. Oh, hey, Richard Parker's doing something, or but it's interrupted him in his drum playing, which once you're building instruments, you're comfortable where you are. That I think that's the message that I get from this shot. But all around, just beautiful. The wide shots, the CGI shots, the way they capture our imagination, really just makes it makes it so that we can be right along on that journey with Pi. So, in addition to being a personal and physical journey, it is also a spiritual one, a religious one. And the religious one never ends, nor should it. And it starts before he's ever on the boat. As a young boy, he's interested in religion. He's questioning all of them. He accepts them all as well, which his father chastises. His father says religion is darkness. His father is thankful for modern medicine that saved him from polio when religion did nothing from his point of view. He tells Pi that even if he does not agree with any of the religions, he needs to choose one instead of wavering among them. In his words, I would rather have you accept something I don't agree with than to accept everything blindly, which I think is really a wise statement from someone I think that would be true of any religionist, in addition to an avowed non-religionist, that we would rather people choose one thing than believe everything. And his response to that is, I want to be baptized. So the idea that his father cannot stop him on his mental journey. He ends up as a Catholic, Muslim, Hindu. Perhaps Catholic because the priest showed him kindness. He goes in and he drinks the holy water, and it would make perfect sense for the priest to come running in with a stick and shouting, "Get out of here, get out of here." But instead he comes in with a glass of water and he says, "Oh, I think you're thirsty." Which is I mean, these are the kind of things that we hear all the time, these moments of welcoming that people say, "Oh yes, I am going to be a part of your organization because of this moment of kindness." One of the ones that I hear, that I heard a lot when I first got here, was of Pam Rosen, was at a family Shabbat, and that she was helping run, and a new family came in thinking about maybe joining and wanted to experience this family Shabbat. And the mother was in jeans, and she said she felt kind of embarrassed that she was wearing blue jeans at the synagogue. And Pam specifically made this mother feel so comfortable and welcome, that it didn't matter what she was wearing. It didn't matter what her kid was wearing. It just mattered that she was there. And that moment of welcoming sealed this mother's decision to join B'nai Tzedek. So that's kind of what I saw in the scene with the priest, where he was Pam Rosen in that situation, where it could have gone in any direction, and he went with kindness. He was Muslim because he was enchanted by the prayer and ritual, the daily 7 times of saying the same words and doing the same movement, but still that rote behavior made the ground, when he pushed his forehead to it, holy space. He really connected to that. And then Hindu, he stayed connected to Hinduism because the gods were superheroes to him, to this idea of story. And he has this comfort, ritual, and superheroes that he has to get from three religions. If he had just converted to Judaism, he'd have all three with no problem. But I didn't write the book. The author of that he's having the interview with in are they in Canada? I think, yeah, they're in Canada when he has that interview with the author, even says, okay, so you're a Catholic, Muslim, Hindu, are you also Jewish? And he responds flippantly. He says, oh, I teach a class in Kabbalah. But that flip response is directly connected to his journey, because the ship is called Tzimtzum. The ship that his family goes on is called Tzimtzum, which when I noticed that during this watch of the movie, I made Natalie let me rewind it for a second so I could see, like, I was watching the big boat bounce around in the ocean, and I was taking a note, and then I looked up and the scene changed. So I said, is the ship named Tzimtzum? And we had to like rewind and go back and see. And then the lifeboat said Tzimtzum for the whole movie. So I didn't really have to, but what are you going to do? So
what does Tzimtzum mean?
It's Hebrew. Hold that thought. We'll get to it. We'll leave it. It is Hebrew, and it's Kabbalistic. It's a phrase that comes out with Kabbalah. A very good question, but hold off, because I want to get your opinion of the movie at this point.
A work of art.
Yeah.
Which ending do you believe was the real journey?
I believe they're both fiction, so it doesn't really matter.
But one other scene that I think is really beautiful is when his uncle is swimming in the swimming pool that he's named after, and it just shows him swimming against the sky.
Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned that before you got on, but that idea of swimming in water that's so clear, and he describes it in a really beautiful way, and yet Ang Lee gives us a picture of it. This impossibly clear water that again, like filming the unfilmable. It's so gorgeous. It looks like his uncle is flying, and he said that swim changed his life, and you can see why.
It made me wonder why there were no waves on the top of the water.
Yeah.
The water in the sky, you'd think there'd be a little waving or something.
Yeah, it was that clear. It was that still, even while he was swimming through it.
I think I was wondering if that was CGI.
Oh yeah.
And also, most likely, all those meerkats were all CGI.
Yep.
And therefore,
Mom,
I read this book a long time ago. Wait a minute, Uncle Norm's calling. I read the book a long time ago when it first came out and loved it. Did not like the movie either time that I watched it, because I think it was better in my head with my imagination, even though it was beautiful, than it was as translated by this director. I'm curious who it was up against, because the story, and if I remember correctly, and again, it's probably been close to 20 years since I've read this book, but I remember the second ending being an epilogue, or did this really happen kind of thing, not as a choice. And I don't remember it being an interview. So that's why I asked if anybody else had read the book, and Judy, I believe, didn't enjoy it as much as I did, but that's okay. I loved the book, disappointed in the movie. So just curious. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, David, is early as he's talking to the author who's interviewing him, he says, this journey will help you believe in God. I would like you to address that. How does this journey make you believe in God?
I don't know that it's the journey that makes me believe in God. So I don't know that just because the author in the book, the author in the movie is told that it'll make him believe in God doesn't mean it makes the viewer believe in God, I don't think.
Okay.
But yeah, that's one of those like reliance of veracity things where you have to say who's talking to whom and how true is what they're saying based on who's saying it. It worked for the author. To go back to your other things nominated for Academy Award, what else was up against? This was the year of Silver Linings Playbook, Lincoln, the Spielberg Lincoln, Beasts of the Southern Wild, Amour. Those were up for Best Director and Best Picture. Best Picture also had Zero Dark 30, Les Mis, Django Unchained.
An artsy year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Argo took a lot that year in addition to Life of Pi, but in addition to it being an artsy year as you describe it, there wasn't, even though Life of Pi took quite a lot of the visual and effects awards, everything else was spread out all over the board. There was no one movie that dominated the top five, so to speak. Shall I go? And as I look, the top, if you consider the top four movies, picture, director, actor, actress, 4 different movies, and that usually doesn't happen. And then if you add supporting actor and supporting actress, it is 6 different movies that got all of those. So again, super rare that kind of thing happened.
There was no shining star that year.
Yeah. No, nothing dominated. So, yeah. Any other reactions to the movie? Tell Uncle Norman hi. Joe, another reaction?
I have one, and that is it occurred to me after I heard the second story, and I thought about it for a while. I mean, granted, it's all fiction, but it made me think that maybe the second one was more believable, and it's why he made up the first story, because he killed somebody and he's very guilty about it, and so he had to make up some other story to kind of, and the author in the movie comes up with this analogous thing that, so in the second story, your mother is the chimpanzee and the man who dies is the zebra, and you're the tiger, and I forgot who, anyway. So and he said yes, and he says yes.
Yeah.
So you just made that story up to blanket and cover over the real story, which is what you just now told me, or told the Japanese guys. And the Japanese guys, except, that's the other thing. If you're kind of a Japanese mentality, maybe you'd accept the second story as more plausible.
Well, but then the insurance claim ends up saying at the end that there was, when he's looking at the insurance claim, it says that he survived with an adult Bengal tiger. And then the wording of it was kind of weird. Like it doesn't flat out say there was a tiger on board. It says it's an amazing story that an adult would survive this long, much less with an adult Bengal tiger. What is the story? I talk all the time about truth versus fact. And this is neither. This is a truth that the truth that I like versus the truth that you like.
I was not kind of on the same page as Gerald with this. I found it difficult to believe or accept. And maybe that's, it is not believable that a hungry Bengal tiger doesn't attack the boy. at some point. It stretches plausibility. And to me, I had a lot of trouble. I was very much struggling with it until he told the other story to the Japanese people. And then I saw, okay, the story of the animals is allegory, and that I could accept it as allegory in that he is basically projecting his own personality into the personality of the tiger. And this I think more reflective of my prejudices. The Japanese company adopts the first story because they feel it has less legal liability than thinking that, okay, their ship's person killed this person. If you make up this story about tigers, there's nobody to sue. So
Yeah, better to be an imaginary story about tigers than to be a story about murder and you have legal repercussions.
Right.
Yes, for sure. Phil, you have something?
Yeah, it also goes to the bit about how when the tiger leaves at the end and he's, leaves without saying goodbye, he's now on land, and if it's him, he is the tiger. The tiger aspect of his personality is no longer needed because he survived, and so that part of his personality kind of goes away, and it feels like part of himself.
Yeah, and the idea of not saying goodbye is again, it kind of bookends the movie, or at least it bookends the journey.
Yeah.
Because at first his girlfriend and he doesn't know if they say goodbye, and then Richard Parker doesn't give him so much as a backward glance. How dare he? One would also think that if he sees the tiger going into the woods, he would say to somebody, "Look at the footprints. Look, there are tiger footprints in the sand." Where else would that have come from? But who knows how long they last. Other comments? If I don't know if you referred to a chat thing earlier, Mom, but for everybody, if you're discussing in the chat, I'm not going to see it until later. So feel free to unmute. Judy.
Yeah. Early in the movie, when he's playing the drums for those young girls who are dancing, and then he follows her to the market, and he asks her about one of the moves she makes in the dance that nobody else did. She says that it meant there's a lotus flower hiding in the forest, which I thought was interesting because in the movie, when he's on that weird island, there is a lotus flower that has the tooth inside. I couldn't quite figure it out. Do you have any comments?
The whole island scene really, the whole island scene kind of takes me out of the survival story. It's definitely where it goes from a tale of survival and treachery into a tale of fantasy. I'm not a science person, so I don't know the science behind how an island could have drinkable water in the day and acid at night. I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's any chemical reaction that would make that happen based on sunlight or chemicals extruded because of lack of sunlight or whatever. But it's definitely where Lenny said that the tiger on the boat was the point where he was like, it's too much. The island was the point for me where it was a little too much, where yes, it's a fiction, and it is, as this story happened exactly as with as much veracity as the story of Harry Potter and casting magical spells in school with other wizards. So it's important to remember that this is a story that, even if the story in the story was an allegory, the whole thing is an allegory for us anyway. That no matter how we watch it from his perspective, for us it's all allegory. So yeah, that was a little weird for me. The human tooth, when I first saw this movie and that human tooth thing happened, I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I almost took my popcorn and went home. But definitely taking stuff from his, real life before that translates to his journey on the boat. It's very parallel. That first half hour of the movie is very parallel to the center, the central structure, with his spiritual journey being affecting his physical journey. And so if he's imagining the island, then yeah, he got that lotus flower directly from his love who told him about the lotus flower in the forest. And so who's going to save him? He's gonna, it's this moment of salvation where he's on the island. He collects roots and seaweed and meerkats for Richard Parker, and goes back on his journey. Although once after the island, we never see those roots or meerkats again. We don't see Richard Parker eating meerkats after that. We don't see Pi eating roots and seaweed after that. So where is he keeping it? Who knows? Maybe it's in that little hold, but there's no telling.
It's also the island also reminds me a lot of Gulliver's Travels. Some of the places that he goes that seem nice, but there's a toxic part to, some weird thing going on that's also kind of a very fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah. Maybe he just drank too much salt water at that point. Who knows? All right. Anyone else? So let's talk. Oh, yes, no.
In contrast to some of the other movies where I just couldn't get into it credibility wise, I had no problem with this one because it was what it was and examined the human condition, like a science fiction in Star Trek where they couldn't get into race relations in the 60s, but they could if they were aliens. So it was just kind of moving a little bit out of reality to where we could and then at that point, I don't have to get into worrying about the particulars of the physics or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have these discussions when we're watching Captain America Winter Soldier. This only happens when the story is plausible and when the story itself deals with reality versus allegory. Then we have to figure out, is the story an allegory or is it reality? And then it becomes, is the movie believable, which again, if we were watching Harry Potter, we wouldn't worry about that. Okay. So Linda asked, I think it was Linda, what is tzimtzum? So it's a Hebrew word that means like separating, holding back, making space. It's a bit of a complicated to translate it, but it's that idea like when you're walking past something and you suck your stomach in to make room for walking past, or that's tzimtzum. It's contracting oneself to make space. When you fill your lungs with air and you feel the tightness in your chest and in your stomach and your back, that contraction of your organs and body around the air, that's tzimtzum. So it's contracting and making space. And it comes up in Kabbalah in reaction to this verse, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. If in the beginning God created heaven and earth, the question that Kabbalah asks is, well, what was before that? Well, if God is creating, what existed before anything existed? And they answer that question, well, before God starts creating heaven and earth, only God exists. So if only God exists, well, okay, great. There's nothing but God in the universe, which means God fills up all the universe. And we know from the story of Moses that when the cloud covers the tent of meeting and the presence of Adonai fills the tabernacle, Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it and the presence of Adonai filled the tabernacle. So if God's presence fills the tabernacle and Moses can't get in, if even Moses can't get in, to when God's presence fills something. How is anything going to get in when God's presence fills the entire universe? And that's where Tzimtzum comes in. So God makes Tzimtzum. God fills everything and then contracts so that there's space made inside the godliness that fills the entire universe to start creating. Now, as I've been talking about this tzimtzum, when we contract, then there's a kind of condensing of ourself, a compressing of ourself on the edge of the area that constricts. So, when you, again, if like everyone take a really deep breath, and you get to the point where you feel that tightness, that is our body pushing out against the space that we've made inside ourselves. That's kind of what God did, of course, with no breath, but making a vacuum. And so that condensed God that's on the edge there starts to collect and drip. Like when you have a glass of a liquid, like think of like you have a measuring cup of oil, and you pour out the oil into your recipe, and then you look and there's still oil in the cup, and that, the sheen along the edge, that's how they describe that godliness, that like this sheen along the edge that's kind of dripping down the sides. And God sees this condensed God and has to collect it so that these droplets of God don't go spinning off into the universe and causing chaos. So God creates these vessels, that these kelim is what they're called, which just means generic vessels, to try and collect the drippage. Well, now you take that God collecting super powerful bits of godliness in vessels, and that old philosophical joke, is God powerful enough to create a rock that God couldn't lift? It's in that vein of thought where God is collecting this godliness in the vessels, and we get what we call shvirat kelim, the shattering of the vessels. So God collects this stuff, the stuff collects in the vessels and shatters them, and this dust from the vessel goes out all over the universe. And when that dust of godliness goes all over the universe, it's those sparks that are connected to the dust that God plants within every human being. These are divine sparks that are all over the universe that get put into us when we are created as humans. So when we bring our spark together with another human being, the whole goal of humanity is to do this. And this, what we do when we bring these sparks together, is called tikkun olam. When we repair the world, we are repairing the eternal. Olam both means the world and forever. So that idea of repairing forever, repairing the eternal, that's our goal as humans, is to do tikkun olam, to bring these sparks together so that so that the divine presence can once again be one. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. On that day, God will be one. That's tikkun olam. And every time we do something for another person, our divine spark meets with their divine spark, and it brings a little bit of unity to the shattered vessels that are out in the universe. And it all starts with tzimtzum. That's the first step in bringing these sparks together. And so, any questions? That, like, the Kabbalistic narrative is always kind of next level when it comes to.
So could you link that back to the ship?
Yes. So the ship is called Tzimtzum. There is something happening when they get on the ship that we're going. So Tzimtzum is the first step in creation of something new. So in order for something new to be there, you have to make space for it. And so the ship is them making space for something new, but it's also a little bit of what pi needs to do. Pi, and remember, pi is irrational and eternal, irrational and never ending. So which is another way that you might want to, if you want to get your brain around the story, just think of it as irrational. So this idea of creation starting with destruction, because again, the Shvirat HaKelim, these vessels that exploded, has a parallel in Hindu teachings. And I'm going to just do this at the basic surface level, because I am not an expert on Eastern religions. I am an expert on Judaism. But the way I read it, in Hindu lore, the god Vishnu sleeps on the infinite cosmic ocean, creating the universe by day and destroying it by night. Which means that this is, and again, this is something that I avoided when we were originally talking about this, but this means that island that created by day and destroyed by night, he was meeting God. This whole wide shot of the island that looks like something out of Moana, it couldn't have been more obvious. But nevertheless, it's supposed, in addition to it being obvious that it was, supposed to be some sort of a figure, it is clearly a parallel to the Vishnu lore. So here he is meeting God, and that's his experience, because I don't know, I guess it's geopomorphism instead of anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism is giving something a human characteristic. Geomorphism, I'm making up the word, is giving land human figures, human attributes, killing and giving life. But anthropomorphism itself plays a huge role in the movie. So if we want to take I found an artistic rendering of the characters of the movie. So if we want to take the story as at its face value, of these four animals on a lifeboat with pi, then that's one way to look at it. But if we do want to look at it as complete allegory, it's probably a little easier to digest from a logical standpoint. It's just not as good of a story. It's not as fantastic of a story to make it a story about murder and intrigue, where it becomes, the hyena is the chef, the zebra is the Buddhist vegetarian, the orangutan is his mother, and pi is Richard Parker. And yet everything points to the fact that, if nothing else, even if the rest of this story is, even if there was no murder of his mother, murder of the Buddhist, murder of the chef, even if that did not exist in the reality of the world that the authors created, pi and the tiger are certainly paralleled.
So chimpanzees can have human-like teeth, having studied teeth in the past. And if the island was his meeting with God, the lotus flower was his mother. Part of his mother was in that lotus flower if she was the chimpanzee. That's
that, yeah. All right. And because you're my mother, I'm going to just say you're right.
I don't know what a lotus flower is doing in a tree.
They picked a tooth.
And I thought, I just didn't see what that was doing up there. And I thought, well, it evolved, and it's not I maybe was thinking it was a tree blossom. that, but what was it? The tooth would have just decayed also, wouldn't it? In acid and all that at night. I don't know. I didn't follow that quite.
I'm gonna need my mom to agree or disagree with what I'm about to say, but because she was a dental hygienist for years. But I believe teeth don't decay for a much longer time, which is why we use dental records to help identify people. My mom is nodding, so we'll go with that.
Generally, don't go into trees to find them, though.
Yeah, that's but again, and like I said, that island scene was definitely where I was like, oh my God. So, but again, if we consider the island to be Vishnu, that's where he meets God. And it becomes, so if these animals are allegories for these people, then the island is an allegory for God. God is his salvation. God is his moment of respite. God is his moment of safety. And also his moment of danger, because if we get too wrapped up in God, if we get too wrapped up in our experience of God, then we can ignore our physical needs. You know, we think of the rabbinic story of the four who entered paradise. One goes crazy, one immediately dies, one denies God, and only one comes out unscathed. So you know, if those are four who, you know, in the experiencing God, that's another thing that's about going into paradise. But if those four, you know, great rabbinic minds have a 1 in 4 shot of coming out of this okay, the same thing could be said about this, you know, very, very wise and learned for 16 Indian boy. And that if he spends too much time only connected to his God, then he's not going to take care of his physical needs and continue the journey. But he needed that break. He needed that moment of ritual something to be able to go on.
It seemed to me, though, that his main experience of God was when during the storm, and then the light came out and he just stood there and, you know, said, take me, you know, I'm ready to go. And then he undid the tarp so that Richard Parker could see the beauty. That seemed like his real connection moment of God.
So I'm so glad you mentioned undoing the tarp, because I was about to, but he undid the tarp so that Richard Parker could see this moment of beauty. And then as soon as he saw Richard Parker's reaction to it, he realized what a mistake that was. That this cat has no, you know, spiritual aspirations. This cat just wants to eat and sleep and survive. So where, and this is also the second time in the movie that he is enjoying a storm. The first time he enjoys the storm, it coincidentally saves his life, because he gets out of the room that's about to be flooded. But you know, this time it you know, he may have lost some things after the storm. Who knows what's left in the boat? And so it's a much more dangerous experience the second time. And I think it again relates to that. Like, if we only acknowledge the divine when something amazing is happening, that can be problematic. Like, we need to acknowledge the divine in the normal, in the plain, in the boring. You know, what's the divine in making lunch for our children? You know, where's the divine in sweeping up the floor? Where's the divine in sitting around bored? But it's there.
I want to go back, now you're talking about the divine. I want to go back to your mom's question, which is when he's having the conversation with the reporter, this will make you believe in God. And what I took out of that particular interaction is what Pi was telling him. This is what made me believe in God. And it to me, it's a very, I'll call it juvenile opinion of God. Okay, God has this plan. I survived this horrible situation because God wanted me to survive. And whenever I needed something, it was there. Okay, I'm running out of food. God provides this island with seaweed and roots. So which then leads us to all these very, what I find troublesome theological questions. Well, what about when God doesn't answer the prayer? What about when you need something and God says no? Okay. So I don't know if you took the same point away from it, that what I think, like I said, I think he was saying to the reporter, this is why I believe in God.
I think that's possible. I think though why he believes in God happens before he gets on the main boat. Like I think the reason he believes in God is because he is always questioning and seeking meaning in things, and he does that through partly his mother's connection to the Hindu gods, and then again, as I mentioned, the Catholic priest's kindness and the Muslim rituals. That those three aspects of religion bring him comfort from different religions, and that's his God experience. And I think it's expressed, it's paralleled in this journey, not discovered by him.
I should mention that when he goes outside during that storm on the ship to enjoy the storm, he's just unbuttoned a hatch that was keeping the inside of the ship safe from the water. And I'm thinking he may have been the cause of the sinking of the ship, because all of the water starts flowing in when it's coming across the deck. It's going down into the boat. So that's that occurred to me.
I am not going to argue ships with a retired Navy man. So I'm just,
pardon, Air Force.
Oh, retired Air Force. Sorry. I got the wrong branch. I apologize. Still not going to argue ships with you. I'll just have to agree. I just don't know enough about the structure of ships but I would hope that someone opening one hatch wouldn't flood the whole ship, but I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I definitely makes me worry about when about leaving the porch door open on a cruise ship. If we were lucky enough to have a porch. All right, so I want to go back to the idea of Richard Parker. He says about 2/3 of the way in, Richard Parker has kept me alive. Fear of him has kept me alert. Tending to his needs gives my life purpose. And that idea of needing to fear and care for something simultaneously keeps his mind active as much as possible, even though it does start to fade toward the middle. So is this fear actually the fear and tending to the self? Is this what the allegory is? Is Richard Parker the part of him that needs to violate some of his basic tenets in order to survive? When he's on the ocean, he's eating fish. Whereas he has a real problem with taking a life, but that's the tiger in him. Does embracing the tiger within him allow him to let it go in Mexico and never be seen again? Is he content after this experience of, I don't remember if it ever said how long the journey took, but he's going from Japan to Mexico on the Pacific Ocean. It takes a long time with no motor. He even makes the joke in the beginning, come on to Pi's Ark. And that the word that we use in Ark, the word that we use in Ark, the word that we use in Hebrew for the Ark, for Noah's Ark, is the same word that's used for Moses's basket. It's actually a nautical term for a vessel that has no means of propelling itself forward or guiding itself. No rudder, no oar, no sail, no anchor. It is a vessel that is completely guided by current and nature and, shall we say, God. So being on this ark, on this tevet, allows him to save the world like Noah did, perhaps, but it also allows him to come off of it with a renewed life, a way to start over, because he's made that tzimtzum, because he's pulled back from himself to allow himself to survive. And the one, yes, I think the one with the tiger is the better story. I think it is a better story than the story of humans and murder and all of that. But it's the same, he says, and so it goes with God. We might not be able to define God. We might not be able to explain creation, but we can anthropomorphize it and use metaphor to try to explain. Whatever we choose to believe is our choice, even if some don't agree with us, even if we reject everything or embrace too much. Whatever we choose, our faith is an expression of free will. And speaking of free will, the Rabbi Gershon Winkler and Lakme Batya Elior say, in a Judaic notion of a world of free will is deeply rooted in the concept of tzimtzum, in the understanding that in creating life, the Ein Sof, or defined as the endless one, a word for God, subdued the omnipotent, all-embracing divine presence for the sake of the realization of the divine will, that there are other beings. Our world, then, is the sacred space that the Great Spirit gave as a gift to us, a space in which to be human as divinely as possible and as divine as humanly possible, a space to err, to fall, to believe, to doubt, to cry, to laugh. Our space created by the simple motion of stepping back, the humble act of honoring the separate reality of an other. And when we step away and make that space to acknowledge the other, whether it's another person, whether it's a divine being, whether it is another aspect of our own self, that connection, that making space for others cannot happen until we make tzimtzum, until we take ourselves a little bit out. So at 12:59, I'm going to say thank you. And I mentioned at the beginning, I have a program at 1:00 that I'm attending. So thank you so much for being a part of our discussion today. Next week's movie is City of Angels. Nick Cage, Meg Ryan. I think it was 99. So going back a little bit, and we'll hear from them as this next week talk about angels, angelology, and the like. So thank you all very much for being here. I am out starting now. I am out this week at the CCAR virtual convention. So if you need anything, please contact Sarah, and I will see you all on Friday night.
Hey, Al.